You people always find new ways to fake it, don't you? Greg sneered, holding the check like it was contaminated. His voice sliced through the quiet lobby of First USA Bank. Let me save everyone the trouble. He flicked open a lighter, flame-kissed paper. The $1 million check began to curl and blacken between his fingers. Gasps rippled through the room. A woman near the counter whispered, "He's burning it." Cree! Across from him, Elijah Cross stood motionless tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that didn't need a logo to announce its price. His beard was sharp, his eyes steady, his calm so deliberate it unsettled everyone who looked too long. The scent of scorched ink filled the air. Greg smiled, satisfied. "There," he said. "Another scam down. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Elijah. The security guard's hand landed on Elijah's shoulder firm, unnecessary. "Sir, step back." Elijah didn't move. "I'm standing exactly where I belong." Greg laughed, tossing the last ember into a metal bin. "Belong? Not in my branch, you don't? Guys like you show up every month, flashy suits, fake checks, and stories about lost millions." Quote. Every word was heavy with practiced contempt. Elijah's tone stayed even. "You should have verified the account before you decided who I am." Greg smirked. "Didn't need to. I can smell a con from a mile away." Phones were already out, clients recording. The young teller, Rosa, hesitated behind her counter, eyes darting between them. Her screen still glowed with a red flag that read Priority Tier 1, Cross Holdings. She whispered, "That's not fake," but Greg snapped, "Not another word." Quote. The check was gone, reduced to ash. The silence that followed wasn't relief, it was the kind that comes right before regret. Elijah straightened his cufflinks silver, engraved with a single C. He spoke softly, but the room carried his voice. "Carla, initiate internal audit. Protocol 7. Branch 214. The phone at his ear glowed. A crisp female voice replied, audible enough for everyone. "Confirmed, Mr. Cross. Compliance board is watching live." Greg frowned. "Who the hell are you?" Elijah's gaze was cool, precise. "The man who owns the bank you just disgraced." For the first time that morning, Greg Mason's smirk faltered, and the room, once filled with arrogance, filled instead with silence thick enough to feel. Greg Mason's smirk was fading, but his pride wouldn't let him stop. He leaned forward over the counter, voice dripping with disbelief. "You expect me to believe you own this place? You walked in here like some wannabe investor, waving a fake check, and now you're calling audits?" Elijah didn't answer right away. The pause was deliberate, heavy, surgical. His calmness unnerved Greg more than any argument could. Around them, the air felt denser, the kind that warns everyone in the room something real was about to break. The guard shifted uneasily. Rosa, the young teller, stood frozen at her station, one hand covering her mouth. On her monitor, Elijah's account still glowed Priority Tier 1, Cross Holdings. Elijah finally spoke, voice low and measured. "You made a decision before you even looked at the data. That's not banking, Greg. That's bias." Before Greg could retort, a notification chimed from the manager's desk. A red light flashed on his computer screen, system lock initiated, Protocol 7. The moment hit like a gavel. "What the hell is this?" Greg muttered, spinning toward the monitor. Elijah didn't move. "Compliance just took over your branch." From the phone in Elijah's hand, Carla's voice came through, steady and professional. "Mr. Cross, live connection confirmed. Compliance board is viewing this feed remotely. We've flagged the manager's actions as misconduct. Proceed as you see fit." Gasps erupted. Rosa whispered, "It's real." He wasn't bluffing. Greg's posture faltered. His voice cracked, half outrage, half fear. You set me up. You came here just to humiliate me." Elijah looked at him, eyes calm but unrelenting. "No, I came here to test integrity. You burned yours the moment you lit that check." The lobby had fallen into a strange silence, not the comfortable kind, but the kind that exposes everything ugly underneath. Customers stared. Phones recorded. Every pair of eyes in the room was now a witness. Elijah glanced toward Rosa. "How long have you worked here?" 3 years, she said softly. He nodded. "You ever seen something like this before?" She hesitated. "Not this bad, but I've seen people turned away, people who looked like you." The truth landed heavier than any accusation. Greg tried to recover control. "I'll call regional management." Elijah cut him off. "You already did, they're watching." Carla's voice came through again, amplified through the branch speaker. "For record, Branch Manager Gregory Mason has violated Internal Ethics Policy 3.1 and destroyed client property. Effective immediately, his access credentials are suspended. Greg turned white. The guard stepped back. Rosa exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. Elijah slipped his phone into his jacket pocket, then said quietly more to the room than to Greg. This isn't about money. It's about what people assume when they see someone like me walk through their doors. Quo. No one dared respond. Even the security cameras seemed to lean closer. As Elijah turned toward the exit, the digital lock clicked behind him, sealing Greg's account, his job, and his pride in one clean motion. The same fire that had burned the check now lived somewhere else in the quiet resolve of the man Greg had just tried to erase. Greg Mason's voice cracked like glass under pressure. "This isn't over," he snapped, even as his screen continued flashing red. "Access denied." He jabbed at the keyboard again, but the system didn't budge. The branch's entire interface had gone gray, frozen under the corporate lockdown initiated seconds earlier. Elijah didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Greg," he said quietly, "what you're seeing now is what accountability looks like in real time." The customers who had been pretending not to stare were now fully invested, phones lifted, whispers turning into commentary. One older man in a Navy suit shook his head. "Man just burned a real check in front of the owner," he muttered. "That's career suicide." Greg looked around desperately. "Everyone, back to your business. This is a misunderstanding." But no one moved. The energy had shifted. His authority had evaporated the moment the system did. Carla's voice came again through the speakerphone, clear, composed, impossible to ignore. "Mr. Cross, internal audit confirms the check originated from Holt Capital's escrow account. The branch manager's actions have been recorded. Legal and HR are standing by." Elijah nodded once, his eyes still locked on Greg. "Send the footage to corporate archives," he said. "Transparency matters more than comfort." Rosa looked up from her station, tears welling. "Sir, I tried to stop him." Elijah turned to her, his expression softening for the first time. "I know, and you'll be treated accordingly. Integrity has a place here." Greg slammed his palm on the counter. "You can't walk in here and just—" Elijah's tone sliced through him, calm, sharp, and final. "I can, because I built what you just tried to burn." The room went silent again. Even the air conditioning hum seemed to fade. Elijah stepped closer. His shoes clicked against the marble, slow, deliberate. "You looked at me and saw a threat. I looked at you and saw potential until you opened your mouth." Greg swallowed hard, color draining from his face. Carla's voice filled the room again. "Mr. Cross, compliance requests confirmation for termination protocol." Elijah didn't hesitate. "Confirmed. Gregory Mason terminated effective immediately. HR to issue statement to regional staff by end of day." The guard shifted his stance, unsure what to do next. Elijah noticed. "You can relax," he said. "This isn't your fight." The man nodded, lowering his hand from his belt. Greg stumbled back, the weight of disbelief dragging him down faster than shame. You set me up," he whispered. Elijah leaned forward, voice low enough for only Greg to hear. "No, Greg, you set yourself up. I just gave you the match." A ripple of gasps moved through the lobby. Rosa closed her eyes, whispering under her breath, "Finally." Elijah turned toward the customers. "Everyone who waited, thank you for your patience. You just witnessed why this company will never tolerate arrogance disguised as protocol." Quote. As he spoke, Carla's voice cut in one last time. "Mr. Cross, confirmation received. Manager access removed. Branch operations suspended pending ethics review." The monitors around the room blinked off one by one. Greg's shoulders sagged. The fight was gone. Elijah took a slow breath, letting the moment settle. Then, without anger or triumph, he simply said, "Justice doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be seen." And in that marble lobby, everyone had seen it. The moment Greg Mason's termination went live, the lobby felt like it had exhaled for the first time all morning. The screens behind the counter dimmed, the system's corporate seal glowing faintly across every monitor. Access revoked, user removed. Even the hum of printers and machines seemed to fade into the background. Greg stood in silence, staring at the blank monitor in front of him, as if sheer will could bring it back to life. But it was over. The same fire he'd started with arrogance had burned him down to nothing. Elijah Cross didn't gloat. He simply turned to Rosa, whose hands still trembled at her keyboard. "You held your ground," he said softly. "That's rare these days." Rosa nodded, trying to speak, but her voice cracked. I knew it wasn't right." Elijah gave a faint smile. "And you said something anyway. That's what right looks like." Quote. At the far end of the lobby, an elderly black woman stepped forward, small frame, elegant hat, quiet strength. "I came here to cash a check too," she said, her voice calm but trembling. "He made me wait 40 minutes last month, said my signature didn't look like mine." Elijah turned toward her, the weight of her words settling deep. "You don't owe anyone proof of your dignity," he said. "Not here, not anymore." Quote. Before anyone could respond, Carla's voice returned over the line, firm and professional. "Mr. Cross, the board requests immediate debrief. Do you wish to handle on-site communications before we go live with the statement?" Elijah looked around the lobby, the witnesses, the cameras, the fear that had begun to fade into relief. "No," he said. "We'll handle it right here. People deserve to see how accountability works." Greg finally found his voice. It was weaker now, stripped of confidence. "You could have told me who you were," he muttered. Elijah turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "If my name was all it took to make you act right, then you never respected the customer, you just feared power." The crowd murmured, a wave of agreement spreading through the room. Rosa stepped forward, gently removing Greg's ID badge from around his neck. He didn't resist. She placed it on the counter next to the burnt remains of the check, a perfect metaphor laid bare. Arrogance reduced to ash beside authority reclaimed. Elijah nodded to the security guard. "Escort Mr. Mason to HR. No need for drama." The guard hesitated for a moment, then complied, leading Greg toward the back hallway. For the first time, the manager walked quietly. When the doors closed behind them, Elijah addressed the remaining staff. "I didn't come here to fire people," he said. "I came here to see if the culture matched the mission statement on your wall." He pointed toward the engraved slogan above the teller stations. "Integrity, service, trust. Now," he continued, "let's start making that mean something." Carla's voice chimed through once more. "Mr. Cross, the compliance board is ready for your closing remarks." Elijah looked at the crowd, the staff, the customers, the phones, still recording, and said evenly, "This branch will close for the day. When it reopens, it will represent everyone who walks through that door, not just the ones who fit a picture in someone's head." The room fell silent again, not out of fear this time, but out of respect. For the first time all morning, Elijah allowed himself a small, tired smile. Justice wasn't loud. It was quiet, deliberate, and undeniable, and now it had a face. The marble floor still shimmered, but the tension had drained from the room. Elijah Cross stood at the center of the lobby, sleeves rolled slightly, posture steady, the kind of calm that follows a storm. Behind him, the glass doors reflected the quiet chaos outside, police lights flashing distantly, curious onlookers filming through the windows. Carla's voice came again, clear through his phone. "Mr. Cross, local authorities have arrived. They were called before the termination went through." "Let them in," Elijah said. "No secrets today." Quote, "Two uniformed officers stepped inside, their shoes squeaking against the marble. The taller one, Officer Reynolds, looked around the tense crowd before focusing on Elijah. 'Sir, we received a report of a disturbance. Something about fraud and destruction of property?' Elijah didn't move from where he stood. "The disturbance is already handled. You're looking at it." He gestured calmly toward the counter, where the burnt remains of the check still lay beside Greg Mason's discarded badge. Rosa spoke before anyone else could. "The manager burned that check," she said. "He called security on a client who owns this bank." Reynolds blinked. "He what?" Greg's voice echoed faintly from the hallway as HR escorted him out. "I was doing my job." Elijah's gaze didn't follow him. "And that's the problem," he said quietly. The officers exchanged glances, then one of them nodded. "We're not making arrests, but we'll file a report for the record." "That's fine," Elijah said. "Transparency protects everyone." He turned back to the crowd, the customers still lingering, the staff unsure whether to return to their posts. "If you were here today, you witnessed what accountability looks like. You don't have to whisper about it later, you can tell the truth out loud." A woman near the front raised her voice, trembling but strong. "They've treated people like that before. My nephew came here last month, same thing. They said his account didn't match his ID." Quote. Elijah nodded. "That's what happens when bias hides behind procedure." Carla's voice returned, now piped through the lobby speaker system. "Mr. Cross, corporate communications is ready to broadcast your live statement to all branches. Proceed when you're ready." Elijah exhaled slowly. The weight of leadership wasn't in his tone, it was in his stillness. He stepped closer to the center of the room, voice even but resonant. "My name is Elijah Cross, CEO of Cross Holdings and majority owner of First USA Bank. What happened here today wasn't an accident. It was a reflection of what happens when we stop seeing people and start judging appearances. That ends now. Every phone in the lobby stayed raised, recording. The words weren't scripted, they were earned. Integrity isn't a slogan, it's a standard. And from this moment forward, every branch under my name will uphold it, even if it costs careers, comfort, or reputation. The room was silent except for the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Officer Reynolds closed his notebook and nodded respectfully. "That's the kind of statement people remember," he said quietly. Elijah gave a single nod. "Let's hope they act on it too." As the officers left, Rosa stepped forward once more. "Sir, what happens to us now?" Elijah looked at her, his expression calm but resolute. "You rebuild, you stay, because you stood up when others stayed silent. And this time you'll help lead the change." The crowd murmured softly, not with shock, but with something else belief. Outside, the sirens faded. Inside, something far more permanent had begun. The crowd slowly began to thin, but no one truly wanted to leave. Something about the moment felt historic, like they had all just witnessed a chapter of justice being written in real time. Elijah Cross stood near the counter, his reflection visible in the polished glass behind him. The burned check had been swept into a small evidence bag by one of the officers, but the scent of smoke still lingered faintly, a reminder that arrogance always leaves residue. Carla's voice came through his earpiece, calm but urgent. "Mr. Cross, the board is watching the live feed. They'd like to proceed with disciplinary protocol for all involved employees. Do you wish to handle it personally?" Elijah took a breath. "Yes. Everyone stays right here until this is complete." He turned toward the remaining staff, the tellers, the assistant managers, the clerks who had watched everything unfold. Some avoided his gaze. Others looked relieved that someone had finally said what they never could. "Who was on duty when this began?" Elijah asked. A timid voice answered. "All of us, sir. But only Greg made the call to security." Elijah nodded. "And nobody questioned it?" The silence said enough. Rosa stepped forward again, her courage stronger now. "We were told not to question management ever." Elijah looked around the room. "That's not management, that's intimidation." He walked slowly past each station, eyes scanning the faces that had just seen power change form. "You don't lose your job for telling the truth," he continued. "You lose it for burying it." One of the assistant managers, a man in his 30s, nervous but sincere, finally spoke. "Sir, I've worked under Greg for 5 years. He trained us to profile quietly. He said it was about minimizing fraud." The words hung in the air like a confession. Elijah stopped walking. His jaw tightened, but his tone stayed level. "And how many people did that cost their dignity?" The man lowered his head. "Too many." Carla's voice echoed again through the speakerphone. "Mr. Cross, documentation confirms 8 prior complaints linked to this branch under Mason's management. All dismissed as unverified. We're reopening them immediately." Elijah's eyes didn't waver. "Good. Send them to my office directly." He faced the remaining employees. "If any of you filed those complaints or wanted to but didn't, now's the time to speak." Rosa's hand went up slowly. "I did. Twice. Both disappeared." Elijah nodded. "Not this time." For a long moment, no one else moved. Then, one by one, a few more hands lifted, hesitant at first, then certain. It was the first honest roll call the branch had seen in years. Elijah exhaled, his voice softer now. "We can't rebuild what we refuse to admit is broken. But today, right here, we start fixing it." Outside, the light shifted through the tall glass windows, casting long shadows across the marble. Inside, the silence was no longer heavy, it was hopeful. Rosa looked at him, eyes glassy but proud. "Thank you, Mr. Cross, for not walking away." He met her gaze and smiled faintly. "Walking away is easy. Staying is how you change things." Carla's voice returned one last time, calm and certain. Board approval confirmed. Branch suspension extended 48 hours for internal review. Elijah straightened his suit, buttoned the jacket, and glanced toward the engraved words above the teller windows. Integrity, service, trust. For the first time since stepping into that bank, those words actually meant something. The next morning, the sun hit the glass facade of First USA Bank like nothing had ever happened. But inside, the building remembered. Every chair, every fingerprint on the marble counter carried the echo of what went down the day before. Elijah Cross arrived early, no entourage, no press team, just the quiet resolve of a man determined to finish what he started. The guard at the door straightened immediately. "Morning, Mr. Cross," he said, voice more careful than before. Elijah nodded. "Morning, let's keep it calm today." Inside, the staff had gathered in silence, waiting for direction. Some clutched notebooks, others avoided eye contact. Rosa stood near the teller line, wearing the same navy blazer from yesterday, a subtle sign of defiance or resilience. Elijah placed his briefcase on the counter and looked around the room. "Before we reopen," he said, "we need to talk about what happens next." No one moved. He could sense the guilt hanging over them, the kind that doesn't come from doing wrong but from staying quiet while it happened. "I don't need apologies," Elijah continued. "I need honesty. This branch failed its purpose not because of one man, but because silence became the culture." A murmur ran through the employees. One woman near the back raised her hand. "We were afraid, sir. If we spoke up, Greg would cut our hours or write us up." Elijah nodded. "Fear is efficient. It keeps people obedient. But obedience isn't integrity." Quote. He walked slowly along the teller desks, running his hand along the cold edge of the counter. "We don't measure professionalism by how quiet you can stay when something wrong happens. We measure it by how you respond." Carla's voice chimed through his phone speaker again. "Mr. Cross, compliance wants confirmation for the next phase of the audit employee interviews and data review." "Approved," Elijah said, "and make sure Rosa's part of the ethics panel. She saw what others didn't." Quote. Rosa's eyes widened. "Me?" "Yes," Elijah said. "You stood up when it mattered. That's leadership. You'll help rewrite how we train people here." The employees exchanged glances, a mix of surprise and relief. Then Elijah turned toward the lobby cameras. "We'll use yesterday's footage for training across every branch," he said. "Not to shame anyone, but to remind everyone what silence costs." Carla's voice reddened. "Copy that. Corporate Communications is preparing the internal memo. Do you want to address all staff via video or in person?" "In person," Elijah replied without hesitation. "If we want change, we can't hide behind screens." He faced the staff again. "We'll hold an open meeting at noon. Clients, employees, management, all in the same room. We're going to talk about bias, trust, and what accountability looks like from both sides of the counter." Rosa spoke softly. "That's never been done before." Elijah smiled faintly. "Then we'll start a new precedent." Quote. Through the glass, he could see the first customers beginning to gather outside, curious but cautious. For the first time, he didn't see them as visitors. He saw them as witnesses, the same way he had been one once. He adjusted his cufflink, the silver C catching the morning light. "Let them in," he said quietly. "Time to show them what a real bank looks like." And with that, the doors unlocked not just for business, but for something bigger. The rebuilding had officially begun. By noon, the lobby of First USA Bank no longer felt like a bank. It felt like a courtroom, a classroom, and a mirror all at once. The doors had reopened just hours earlier, but word had already spread. Customers who'd watched yesterday's video online showed up not to withdraw money, but to see what justice looked like in person. Phones hovered quietly, no one daring to interrupt. Elijah Cross stood near the center of the room in a dark blue suit this time, calm but resolute. Rosa sat beside him at a small round table with a notepad and a microphone. Behind them, a banner hung on the glass wall. Open dialogue, truth and trust. Carla's voice came through a conference speaker on the table. "Mr. Cross, the Internal Ethics Board and regional managers are connected. You're live across all branches." Elijah glanced around at the employees, each standing behind their counters like witnesses. "Good," he said. "They should hear this too." He turned toward the crowd. Yesterday wasn't just about a check. It was about what happens when assumptions are treated as evidence. We say we serve communities, but sometimes we forget which ones. A man in his 50s, a longtime client with a business account, raised his hand. "I've been banking here for 20 years, he said. "I watched that video last night. I thought that couldn't be our branch, but it was." Elijah nodded. "That's what denial sounds like until it hits home." The man lowered his gaze, ashamed. Rosa leaned forward, her voice steady now. "People always said this branch was strict, but no one said why. We weren't protecting the bank. We were protecting bias." A murmur spread through the employees standing along the walls. The truth was raw but freeing. Elijah folded his hands, his tone firm but not angry. "Accountability isn't about punishment. It's about memory. We remember moments like this so we don't repeat them." Carla's voice returned through the speaker, calm but firm. "Mr. Cross, Compliance Review confirms multiple prior incidents across the region, similar patterns. Would you like to expand this reform to the entire network?" Elijah looked around the room, then said, "Yes, starting here. This branch will be our test site for equity training, live audits, and open reports. Every client, every complaint logged, reviewed, and answered." Applause rippled softly through the crowd. Rosa's eyes glistened. "You mean No more silence? Elijah turned to her. Not if I can help it. A young teller in the back spoke up. Sir, people might resist this. They'll say it's too political. Elijah smiled faintly. Fairness isn't politics. It's policy. And it's long overdue. Through the glass doors, sunlight flooded the lobby, washing the marble floor in gold. The same floor that had witnessed humiliation yesterday now reflected something cleaner truth without fear. Elijah picked up the microphone, his voice lowering to a final cadence. If you walked in here for service, you'll still get it. But if you walked in here to be seen, you'll get that too. This is your bank now, every one of you. Carla's voice came back one last time. Message received, all branches confirmed. The lobby erupted in quiet applause, not for spectacle, but for change that finally had a heartbeat. And for the first time since the fire, Elijah allowed himself to breathe. The applause faded, but the energy in the room stayed alive, steady, like a current running beneath the marble floor. For the first time since the chaos, First USA Bank felt different. Not fixed, not perfect, but awake. Elijah Cross stood by the glass wall, overlooking the crowd of employees and clients still seated for the open dialogue. Carla's voice was silent now, the corporate line muted. This part, the human part, was his to lead. He took a slow breath before speaking. Yesterday, this lobby was a battlefield, he said. Today, it's a classroom. But what we learn here has to go beyond these walls. A client in the front row, a woman in a green blazer clutching her phone, raised her hand timidly. Mr. Cross, she said, when I saw the video, I felt proud, but also scared, because this could have happened to me. Elijah nodded. That's the truth most people don't want to admit. It already has happened, just not always with cameras rolling. Quote. He walked closer, lowering his tone, drawing everyone in. The world doesn't change when the powerful apologize. It changes when the ordinary speak up. Rosa scribbled notes quickly beside him, her focus sharp. Elijah looked her way. Rosa, what do you see from your side of the counter? She hesitated. People come in nervous, especially first-timers. They dress up, speak carefully, try not to seem out of place. You can feel the fear before a single word. Elijah nodded. That fear is what we're erasing. One of the assistant managers, the same man who'd confessed about Greg's quiet profiling, raised his hand. Sir, what about us? The ones who stayed silent? Elias Chazim his. Then speak now. Silence yesterday doesn't disqualify honesty today. The man took a shaky breath. I was wrong. We all were. We followed his lead because it was easier, because it kept our paychecks safe. The words hit heavy, honest. Elijah didn't scold him. He simply said, courage and comfort rarely live in the same room. Today, you chose the right one. The crowd was listening closer now, not just hearing him, but feeling every word. Then Rosa's phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at it, eyes widening. Sir, the video from yesterday, it's trending. Over 6 million views. Elijah looked at her, expression unreadable. Let it trend, he said. People need to see what reform looks like before they believe it's real. Quote. He turned to the cameras that were still live streaming across the bank's social channels. To everyone watching, we're not canceling a man. We're correcting a system. There's a difference. Applause rose again, stronger this time. Some clapped out of relief, others because they finally believed him. Carla's voice chimed back in through the speakerphone. Mr. Cross, the board just issued a formal statement they're adopting your policy network-wide. You've got full executive authority to lead the rollout. Elijah gave a single nod. Then we're not just rebuilding this branch, he said. We're resetting the standard. Rosa smiled. You really think one moment can change everything? Elijah looked toward the door where sunlight cut through the glass like a promise. Not one moment, he said softly, but the right one repeated by enough people absolutely can. The room went quiet again, but it wasn't the silence of fear anymore. It was the kind that follows clarity. And for the first time, First USA Bank didn't feel like an institution. It felt like a beginning. By late afternoon, the sunlight in the lobby had softened to gold. The open dialogue was officially over, but no one wanted to leave. The same people who had once come here for deposits and withdrawals were now standing together, employees, customers, and managers, all waiting to see what came next. Elijah Cross stepped forward again, one hand in his pocket, the other resting lightly on the counter that had once been a stage for humiliation. Now it felt like a pulpit. Carla's voice came through softly from the conference line. Mr. Cross, media outlets are requesting statements. They've picked up yesterday's footage and today's live broadcast. How would you like to proceed? Elijah didn't look at the phone. Tell them they'll get a statement when the work's done, not when it's trending. A few people in the lobby smiled. He wasn't chasing headlines, he was setting standards. Rosa approached cautiously, holding a printed copy of the new internal memo that had just hit their inboxes. "Sir," she said, "corporate just sent this. The Cross-Protocol Initiative. It's your reforms already approved." Elijah took the document, scanning it. The language was clinical, full of policy terms, but at the bottom, a new tagline caught his eye. "Accountability isn't punishment, it's progress." He smiled faintly. "That'll do." Then he looked up, addressing everyone still gathered. "This is more than a policy update. It's a promise to our clients, to our teams, to anyone who's ever been doubted for looking different while being right." A man in the back spoke up, a younger teller with nervous energy. "Sir, what happens to Greg now?" Elijah's expression didn't change. "HR handles the legal part, but as for redemption, that's up to him. He can learn from it or stay angry at it. Either way, the system won't protect him anymore." Rosa asked quietly, "And the others? The ones who filed those complaints?" "They'll be contacted, compensated if necessary, and given a chance to come back," Elijah replied. "When people tell the truth, they shouldn't lose their livelihoods for it." Quote. The room nodded in quiet agreement. Carla's voice interrupted again, calm and precise. "Mr. Cross, compliance audit is complete. 8 prior cases officially reopened. The board requests your closing remarks before the press briefing tomorrow." Elijah adjusted his tie. "Tell them I'll write it myself, and it won't be about damage control, it'll be about culture repair." He walked toward the large glass window overlooking the city. From this height, the world outside seemed small, but he knew every reflection in that glass represented someone who'd felt unseen. He turned back to the staff. "When people walk in here now, they won't see a bank that tolerates bias. They'll see a place that remembers what happened here and refuses to repeat it." Rosa's eyes followed him. "You really think people will change, sir?" Elijah smiled. Not optimistic, but certain. "I don't need everyone to change, just enough of us to make the rest uncomfortable." The line went silent, but Carla's voice returned softly. "Mr. Cross, regional branches are asking for live access to your next session. They're calling it the Cross Standard." He chuckled quietly. "Tell them we'll make it worth watching." Outside, the evening light poured through the glass, turning the marble floor into a mirror. And in that reflection, Elijah didn't just see himself. He saw a man standing where power had once been misused, now using it to rebuild. Justice had happened once. Now reform had a face and a name that would echo through every branch that dared to stay silent again. The next day arrived with a strange kind of stillness, the calm that comes after a storm, when everyone's waiting to see what survives the light. The news had already broken. By 8 a.m., headlines flashed across morning broadcasts. CEO Elijah Cross fires bank manager, after racist incident turns scandal into reform. Outside First USA Bank, news vans lined the curb, cameras aimed at the glass doors that had become the symbol of something bigger than finance. Inside, staff prepared for the press briefing, their movements slower, more deliberate, as if afraid to break the fragile new order. Elijah Cross entered quietly through the side door, tailored gray suit, black tie composed but focused. The lobby was spotless. The ashes were gone, but the memory remained in every employee's posture. Rosa stood near the front, clipboard in hand, her name badge now reading Assistant Ethics Liaison. "Morning, Rosa," he said. "Morning, sir. Media's here. Carla said you have full discretion for what to share." Elijah nodded. "Good. Then they'll get truth, not theatrics." Quote, at exactly 9, the glass doors opened, and the lobby filled again, this time with reporters, corporate officials, and clients who'd lived the story through their screens. Cameras clicked, microphones rose. But the moment Elijah spoke, the room quieted instantly. "Yesterday, this building failed its purpose," he began, his tone steady and low. "But today, it fulfills it not by avoiding the truth, but by facing it." He didn't read from notes. He didn't need to. We can't talk about integrity without confronting bias. We can't preach fairness while letting fear dictate who belongs. This isn't just about one manager, one mistake, or one viral clip. It's about an institution learning how to see people again. A few reporters scribbled quickly, heads bowed. Elijah's voice didn't waver. "Some people think leadership is about control. It's not. It's about responsibility for what happens in your name, even when you're not in the room." Quote. Behind him, Rosa watched, her chest swelling with pride. One reporter raised a hand. "Mr. Cross, critics say this kind of public reckoning could damage investor confidence. How do you respond?" Elijah gave a faint smile. "If fairness scares investors, they're in the wrong business. This company's value was never built on silence." Murmurs of approval rippled through the room. Carla's voice came through the speaker near the corner. Mr. Cross, regional branches have joined the live stream. Total viewership across the network is now at 200,000. Elijah turned slightly toward the camera. Then let them all hear this, he said. We are not rebranding for image. We are reforming for future. Every branch will undergo equity and conduct audits. Every complaint, no matter how small, will be reviewed by an independent panel. And every client who walks into one of our buildings will be treated with dignity, not doubt. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then steady. He paused before ending. I didn't plan to go viral, he said. I planned to tell the truth, and sometimes the truth just happens to trend. The cameras flashed again, but Elijah didn't flinch. He wasn't performing, he was documenting. When the briefing ended, Rosa stepped up beside him. You didn't use the teleprompter, she said. He smiled. I didn't need it. I've been writing that speech my whole life. Quote. Outside, the crowd erupted in cheers as Elijah exited through the same glass doors where everything had begun. Only this time, when they reflected his image, they didn't show a man under attack, they showed a leader who had turned fire into light. By evening, the cameras were gone. The crowd had thinned. Only the faint hum of the city remained outside the glass facade of First USA Bank. Elijah Cross stood alone in the lobby, tie loosened, jacket over his arm. Rosa passed by with the last of the staff, pausing at the door. You did it, she said softly. He shook his head. No, we did. Justice isn't a solo act. She smiled and left, her footsteps fading into the quiet. Elijah turned toward the counter, the same one where the fire had started, now spotless under the warm light. He placed his hand on the marble, his reflection staring back. It began with a burned check, he murmured. But what we rebuilt is worth more than any number printed on paper. Carla's voice came softly through his earpiece. Mr. Cross, headquarters just confirmed the Cross standard is now mandatory company-wide. He smiled faintly, eyes steady. Good. Let's make sure it lasts longer than the outrage. Outside, the city lights flickered across the glass like a promise kept. The bank was quiet again, not from fear, but from peace. Justice had come full circle.